We're going to start off with reminding everybody that we are not here to give medical advice. Everything that we are talking about today is really kind of helping you understand um, your blood work. We cannot obviously read labs, we don't take the labs, we are not medical experts by any way, shape, or form. This is all educationally based. And on that note, actually, Joy is running the show tonight, so I'm going to hand over the microphone to Joy and let her take the floor, hopefully. You there, Joy? She might have her speaker off. Some technical difficulties. Let's see here. Sent her a message. Hey, Joy, can you hear us? She can't hear anything, may have to get out and come back in. Okay, pop out, come back in. Um, in the meantime, I hope that everybody's had a really good new year. Some of the things that we're going to talk about this year, we're going to run a couple different series, but we're starting off with a more well-balanced understanding of each individual's needs, which obviously starts with our blood work, understanding your blood work, understanding what's going on inside your body to help you guys build the more optimized you. Which comes back to what I've been saying about protocols this entire time is that protocols are actually very individual. There are some great ones out there. There are ones that are designed for whatever that person that designed it for what they were achieving. Does that mean that it won't work for you? It will work for you. But you got to understand your blood. You got to understand what's going on inside of your body. You want to look at the whole big picture. So we are starting with our blood. All right, Joy, can you hear us now? No? Huh. I wonder why. Um, well, that's a technical difficulty because you've got the floor tonight. Um, are you on? Let's see here. Give us 1 second. Um, so one of the things we are working on is setting up a classroom where we're going to have places that you can go to get your blood drawn. And so we are working on building that. You can see the outline of it in classrooms right now. Oh, I'm echoing. Nope. I think she's trying to figure it out. Um, so we will be building that out for you guys. So it's a place that you know where you can go and order some labs. If you for some people, they only get to use with their insurance labs once a year. I personally actually get my labs done about 3 times a year. But that's just me, and for the needs that I have, I go above and beyond what most people do. I have all my vitamin levels checked. I have all my hormones checked because I have hormone issues. Um, so, that's gonna be the beginnings of it. Knowing where your cortisol levels are is gonna be important because that's part of the weight loss, um, journey that we have. So, all of those markers that we're going to suggest that you're testing, um, are gonna come into play on this. And hopefully Joy can get in because 'cause she's got a whole bunch of information for you.
I ended up having to call in from my cell phone. For whatever reason, I can't get it connected on my computer.
Well, there's her voice. We are going to hand over the floor, even if we don't see her pretty face. That's okay. So the floor is 100% yours now.
I look like ass anyway. I've been gone all day, so it's fine. It's the life we lead running around. I've had a ton of in-person clients over the last few days with the new year, new me, everybody trying to get their current first check-in of 2026 taken care of. Which is kind of why we're doing the blood work situation. It's the time of year where a lot of people are getting started on a new journey, and thinking about adding some new protocols and things like that. And we want to make sure that everybody understands what their options are. And it's better to test rather than guess what it is that you're doing. Because responsible research starts with data and not just trends. One of the things Raven mentioned last week was that we were going to be working on de influencing people this year. And this kind of falls as a part of that. You don't need to follow the trend of every other researcher who's trying every product and doing everything. You need to be a responsible researcher, look at your data, and do what works for you and find out what those things are in relation to your health and your particular journey. So, kind of like the blood work 101, testing should always come before any kind of supplementation, because you can't optimize what you don't know your measurement currently is. So, blood work can provide some insight into your metabolic health, your hormonal balance, nutrient status, where you're at on the curve for inflammation and recovery capacity, which is huge, especially as we age, as well as any potential safety markers before and during any kind of research protocol. So, for people who are running some of the more advanced protocols, that becomes even more evident in relation to the safety markers, because you need to check IGF-1, your hormones, and things for some of the protocols that can greatly alter those. So, really, without labs, any kind of supplementation or a protocol is really just like guesswork, and it's not really research. So you want to establish a baseline and try and identify any deficiencies or potential dysfunction. And that way you can, help avoid anything that one could be harmful, two is unnecessary. A lot of people will supplement like B12, but they don't need it. Their B12 levels are fine. Or the reverse, people don't supplement their vitamin D only to find out that their vitamin D number is in the tank and nowhere near an optimal number for their best health. Um, there's also a lot of other risks to supplementing without understanding where you're at. It could be masking some underlying conditions. You can create nutrient or hormone imbalances by taking some things. You can make your insulin resistance worse or affect your thyroid function. There's just so many things that can be affected by what we do as researchers. And you don't know what you don't know until you do some blood work and get that tested. So there are some basic beginner, like the baseline panels, which is mostly what a regular doctor will run. They're going to run your CBC. They might do a CMP, which is a metabolic panel. They usually do lipids, fasting glucose, a basic urinalysis, hopefully your A1C, depending on whether your insurance covers it or not. Sometimes they don't, and you have to ask for it separate. So, really, those are kind of like the basics that should be given, and you really don't necessarily even have to fight to get them covered. But there's a lot of other things that you should look at adding, especially as a researcher, like the ferritin, uric acid, ApoB, homocysteine, things like that, things that dig a little bit deeper into your actual well being of your everyday function.
Can you
Those
explain
things.
what those are, Joy? For those that wouldn't know what you just were talking about, those particular, what those markers are?
Um, I can, but we don't have all night.
Okay.
There, there's a lot of homework that goes into these. I have a bunch of information yet to add to the classroom. I did get a few things loaded into it right now, just like some basic blood work, test, don't guess, a midlife women's panel, but I have a lot more to go into it. I literally have been gone all day. I left at like 9:30 this morning, and I just got back from out of town like maybe an hour ago. So it's been a crazy
Okay.
day. So
I was just hoping that
it-
for just a general, um, kind of a general picture of what it is that's different from those things that you just mentioned versus what a doctor would run and what that might tell them. And just a very, I mean, obviously, we're going to send them to the classroom where they can, as we get the stuff up there, they'll be able to really understand it, but like a quick synopsis of it.
Well, so like the add-ons that I had just mentioned, I hadn't quite gotten there yet, but what those kind of add insight into is like insulin sensitivity, and your inflammation that's in your body, as well as any potential metabolic dysfunction. Those are the kind of tests that you can run to determine whether you're pre-diabetic, on like your fasting insulin, ferritin, if you're low on iron, the uric acid and homocysteine are going to have to do with your inflammation. So there's a lot of value to adding those kind of optimized panel type items, and most doctors and insurance companies don't find them to be standard, which is why you have to ask. Sometimes they don't necessarily charge, but they also don't just automatically include them because they don't want to add more than they need to. And if once a doctor knows that you understand more about blood work, then usually they're pretty good about adding what you know you want to look at, rather than just, turning you down. So the next batch kind of moves into like performance and hormone panels. Those are the kind of things that you're looking at, like testosterone, total and free, your estradiol, cortisol, IGF-1, and of course, looking at your thyroid, because all of those things play into optimizing your health. And if we don't look at optimization of your health before getting into a lot of the peptides and things like that, you can just be wasting your money. You might be overdoing it, or you may be doing something that your body doesn't need. So if you haven't tested those things, you aren't going to know for sure whether you are or aren't going to get anything specific from researching a particular thing. And then I do have like some specific blood work panels that are more geared toward, like if you're doing a GLP-1 for metabolic research type things. There's a list of key markers. So, like your fasting insulin and glucose, your A1C, doing a lipid panel, and electrolytes, along with your vitamin B12 and vitamin D. And why you want to do those is because they do track your insulin sensitivity. You can prevent nutrient depletion, and it also helps monitor your liver and your kidney safety, because a lot of things that we do can affect our other organs. And electrolytes are listed on this, and a lot of people don't know that when you're taking a GLP, the slowing of the gastric emptying and the basic mechanism of action will actually leach electrolytes, items from your system. So you need to make sure that you have upped your electrolyte um, intake when you are on a GLP. So magnesium, salt, all of those things that are found in like a basic electrolyte, like Element or Redmond Relight. Those are two of my personal favorites. You don't want a sweet fruity drink. You want something that actually has the salt and the minerals, because those things are being leached from your system just by being on a GLP. Those are some of the reasons why so many people get the sulfur burps and potential colon blockage. So it's because your body isn't getting as much of the nutrients and those electrolyte things that you need. And then with like the vitamins, again, you don't necessarily know where you're at with that if you haven't tested to know if you're going to have optimal results by knowing what your vitamin levels are. Then there's some other markers if you're going to do like the growth peptides, recovery stacks, your thyroid panel, your cortisol, IGF-1, all of those things fall into other realms of the peptide research. If you're looking at doing SARMs and other performance enhancing stuff, you definitely need to get your lipids and your total and free testosterone, your estradiol, DHT, males PSA if you're over 35. So those are additional things that you want to check because SARM's research can affect those differently than just standard GLP-1s. If you're doing any kind of like recomposition protocol, again, you're back to like fasting insulin, thyroid panels, cortisol, vitamin D, lipids, because all of those things can be affected by anything that you might be researching when you're working on a recomposition protocol. So you want to match your blood work to the mechanism of action of the compounds that you're going to be researching. So,
Uh,
so far, do we have any questions, or should I kind of keep going a little bit?
Let's give them a second because a lot of them type in their questions. And feel free to type your questions at
And
any
I can't
time.
see them. So, Raven, you'll have to tell me if there's a
Yep.
question.
It says, we have from Scott. Other than standard blood test, CBC, hormonal, A1Cs, etc., what others specifically are there? And Scott, I think what we were saying is Joy is going to put those up in classrooms for sure because there are probably a lot that she could recommend in terms of depending on what it is that you're looking for. But giving the floor back to Joy.
Yeah, what you add in addition to like the standard panel that a doctor would run really has more to do with where you're at in your journey, what you want to research, and what information you feel you're lacking in regard to your health. So I am a 57-year-old woman. I'm going to be 58 this year. I've been menopausal for a long time, and I have like a rare blood disorder and some other things that kind of go along with like the hormone issue. So I have specific things that have to be tested. I have to get my blood work done every 3 months. I have to do platelet smears to make sure that my cells aren't doing weird division. I have just a lot of other things going on. Things don't work the same way for me when I'm researching something. For example, like my red blood cells are so low. If I go to the doctor, they're like, you look like you're dead. Like your numbers tell us that you're not surviving. But yet, here I am. I'm a power lifter. I get along just fine. I have no issues with that. And nobody's ever been able to figure it out. Been this way my entire life. So I have a whole host of other things that I need to look at in what it is that I'm researching because they can all affect me very differently. So it really is very personalized to you and what it is that you're trying to research. So that's kind of
So
where
you're
like what we put in the classroom will break it out a little bit further to which tests kind of apply to what things you want to look at.
so let's do an example only because I know, so I get to ask this. GLPs, many of us are on these. Um, how does your blood issue that you have found obviously through your blood testing, how does that affect you being able to utilize anything that's a GLP?
I can use any of them and none of them work on me. So I have virtually zero effect. None of them make me nauseous. None of them curb my appetite. Um, Literally, they do nothing for me. Now, ultimately, tirzepatide might help with some inflammation, but I don't have any like blood work numbers to say yes for sure it has because it really hasn't made that much difference. Most of my research differences have come from my nutrition, how and when I eat, because part of my issue also determines that my body doesn't understand how to process food properly. It never has. So like it doesn't know what to do with a carbohydrate. It's really bizarre. So a lot of it's very different for me when it comes to the research side of things. So I can take any of them, but none of them really provide any other benefit that they should.
All right, Scott added, last week I mentioned I had my testosterone levels tested, and my levels in mid-July last year was 343. Um, I think he's got NG DL. And again, keep in mind, we are not doctors. We cannot obviously tell you what to do. But that's some information he added in. So I guess he's asking something um, on where that since maybe in a range, which I believe is isn't that kind of the lower end of a normal? Yeah.
It can be, yeah, especially depending on age and other factors. And I guess I probably should have read our little blood work disclaimer. Information provided within this community is for educational and research discussion purposes only. Before initiating any supplement, peptide, hormone, or metabolic research protocol, strongly recommended that you obtain baseline blood work to assess your current health status. Should have said that at the very beginning. Sorry.
I sort of did. Um,
I
I sort
couldn't
of did.
hear.
I know. We did kind of cover that. But again, so Scott, if you're looking at potentially working with a physician about your testosterone, I know, um, knowing your numbers, knowing your age, knowing where things are going. And if one doctor isn't necessarily giving you an answer you want, there's always more physicians out there. There's more options out there. You don't have to stick to one. With telehealth out there now, you can shop around as much as you want. So however way you wish to s- work on your testosterone levels, that becomes very individualized. Knowing your baselines is obviously going to be the most important. The fact that you do it, it looks like twice a year, if I recall correctly, is a good thing. Um, so where you take those numbers from there is going to be up to you. If you start any kind of hormone therapy, obviously you're going to want to continue to watch those levels because you don't want to go too high either.
You know, a big piece of hormone therapy is how you feel in relation to what it is you're taking. So, for example, I am on hormone replacement therapy, and I do utilize testosterone for that. And typically, my numbers run quite a bit higher in relation to.
I think
But
you
even with
dropped.
working with, yeah, it's my phone because it will keep blanking out if I don't keep touching it.
Yeah.
So even working with my doctor, they're like, well, it seems like it's a little bit high, but it's more about how I feel at whatever level I'm at. Because it is one of the things that I do respond to pretty well. So I don't have like a standard injection protocol that most people would have. I have a varied one that kind of rotates between a 3 week, we'll call it a roller coaster kind of thing, that helps kind of keep it a little bit better in check, but keeps me feeling better. So, even if you're, Scott, if you're at 343, depending on your age and your current health condition and stuff, if you don't feel good, then let your doctor know that. Say, hey, this might be in the range, but I don't feel like it's optimal because I don't feel as good as I think I could with maybe a higher number. Don't be afraid to have those conversations because it will let your doctor know that you're educated enough to know that you're in range, but maybe not optimal. Um, and then they feel a little bit more comfortable furthering the conversation with you because a lot of doctors just won't bother because they don't feel people understand it anyway. So, at least from my personal experience of other people I've dealt with, and having a lot of clients that I have had to route to either like a telehealth or another doctor because they aren't getting the type of response that they're hoping from their existing physician. And physicians aren't necessarily trained in this type of stuff. Your average GP, unless they have a personal interest in it or have gone through it themselves, they don't always have the medical background to give you a better answer or even help you with that. And hopefully they're confident enough that they can let you know that so that you know to go somewhere else. But, if they don't and you don't feel like they're giving you what you need, don't be afraid to go somewhere else or at least get a consultation somewhere else.
And I think in all of that, let's talk about women real fast. And I'd like to do a deeper dive on a different live. Women can absolutely take testosterone. We drop our testosterone levels. It's part of our own hormonal imbalances as we age. On my blood tests, and I get them done very regularly, and we're trying to rebuild my entire hormones inside of me because at some point I basically went from being normal to being beyond low. Um, so for me, what I need to take would be more so generally than what other women may need to take, just because of the way that my body hormone dumped when I lost a lot of weight, which is something that happens. You can hormone dump. So I'm now needing to rebuild that. Obviously, being postmenopausal has something to do with it all too. But, when you sit down and you do these labs, women can still check their testosterone levels. We too should have testosterone levels. We should have the estrogen levels, the progesterone levels, all of that. They all work together.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of information come out in women's research just over like the last year and a half in relation to prescribing hormones. They had such the black box warning for progesterone and estrogen for women causes cancer, does this, does that. And really, they were basing that on some, half-ass study that was done like 35 years ago that really had no true bearing on what the reality was for coming out of that study. So much of that has been walked back just over the last year, that more and more doctors are understanding that yes, you can prescribe any of the needed hormones in order for women to feel optimal again. It's important for your brain health, it's important for your mental health, your physical health. There's so much that plays into that. And women have suffered for a really long time, not being able to get the kind of hormonal care that's needed.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Do you have more in your today's series, Joy? I know you were taking a break to answer some questions, I think, if I recall.
Well, I most of what I have is really just going to be like specific to what people are wanting to research, and putting that out there. I do have some like more hormone specific type things for women from a couple of different providers, because everybody has a slightly different opinion in relation to a lot of that. So I like to present multiple views for people to kind of read through. Some of it is like very research heavy, and some of it is more on the lighter side. So it really just kind of depends on what people are interested in hearing about. Because blood work can go a pretty deep dive.
All right, let's see if
And it is
anybody else
very
got.
specific to people. So,
Right. All right, guys, questions? D. Rivers, just curious, when you test your IGF levels for the purpose of research Tessa, what am I supposed to be looking for?
so the basics of IGF-1, you need to know like where your starting point is so that when you are researching a product that is a GH secretagogue, you know whether it's actually affecting your IGF-1 and where it's taking that number. Because if you get too high, it can have a negative effect on your system. And some people don't process secretagogues the same way. So you could be spending a lot of money on something that's doing you no good if it doesn't work for your system. And really, the only way to know that is to do the blood work to see if it's actually doing what it needs to do for you. So if you test it before and then you do a protocol with Tessa, test it again at the end to see if it did raise your IGF-1. If it didn't, then one of two things could be happening. It could be that your body doesn't metabolize it the same way and you're not getting the benefit from it, or you might need to do a higher amount. If you are really kind of hell bent on the Tessa situation, it works great for some people and it doesn't work for others. Again, everybody is very individualized in what does and doesn't work for them. A good example like would be NAD plus. A lot of people assume that, oh, my NAD gives me a great rush. It's wonderful. But depending on your existing system, you may or may not get that rush. Um, Even though at my age, my NAD levels should, in theory, be very depleted. But for all of the years that I've taken NAD off and on, I've never had a rush. For me, it is just a clean cognitive energy and it allows me better focus, which nobody ever really talks about with NAD. But for me, that's the benefit that I get from it. But my NAD levels, even at my age, are actually pretty good. But again, it has to do with my weird blood anomaly that makes me a little bit different than a lot of other people. But so yeah, testing before you do Tessa. It's not a cheap peptide to run, so you want to know if you're getting any result from it that isn't, because Tessa is supposed to help with like visceral fat. You may not necessarily see as many external results. You don't necessarily feel anything with Tessa, but it should be raising your IGF-1, which gives you the ability to work on body recomp. And like visceral fat is more internal than it is external, so you might not necessarily see those results as evidently as you would like in a GLP. Does that make sense?
And I think people need to remember that with any of these, they're tools in your toolbox. They are not magic wand to make you just have a deflated visceral fat. Um, you need to put forth the effort as well. They are there to help you. They're there to assist you. They're working in the background and doing what they do. But really, we have to take the responsibility at the end of the day for our overall health. You need to get out there, you need to eat better. You need to move your body in different ways, not just okay, if you're walking all the time, that's great. Your body's already used to that. You also need to consciously be doing something else to help your body become more fit and more optimized. It goes beyond your everyday activities. When I worked in the restaurant, I was on my feet for 18 hours a day practically because I basically lived there. I owned it, I ran it, the whole 9 yards. And I'm thinking, I'm walking all the time. Why am I so overweight? Um, I didn't do anything else. I just was counting my steps that I took on a daily basis. Um, so you have to take not just what is part of your daily activity, but going beyond that, finding the moments to do something else that's good for your body. For example, my dog likes to play fetch. So instead of bending down and picking up the ball, I do squats. Every time I reach down for her ball, I do a squat. Didn't used to do that. I can see it in my legs. I can see the muscles building because I'm constantly doing these squats, or I'll do lunges, or I'll do something because apparently it's her job to play fetch. Um, can't walk by her without throwing the ball. Um, but it's you got to shake up your routine outside of your daily living routine, which is all part of the whole big picture. So while we're doing the blood work to make sure that we're optimizing what we're doing, you also have to take the active role in taking the responsibility to let these work for you. These are not, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch TV, and I'm going to be magically fit. That's not what these do.
Yeah, and context matters when you're trying to interpret blood work, because being in range doesn't necessarily mean optimal. In range on vitamin D is normally if it's anywhere between 30 and 60, a doctor will be like, oh yeah, it's fine. But actually, you should be closer to 80 to 90 for a more optimal result for your health. And watching your blood work, the trends matter more than just like a single value. So, getting a single snapshot that you don't ever look at again, is why you need to have repeated blood work so you can follow trends. You get your blood work values, and then you start eating better and you start sleeping more, because the context of the other factors in your life also play a great part in where your numbers are going to be and how well something works. Or if you're not sleeping, you're, eating like a trash panda, you're super stressed all the time, you're not taking things at the right time. All of those things can affect how you feel, how your blood work looks, and how taking any type of research or supplement ends up being a good or bad thing. So repeated blood work allows you to follow the trends of your body and what things are and aren't working, more so than just a single individual snapshot. And then your labs can help guide your decisions, as to what you may or may not need to take or drop from your program or add to your program.
All right, any other questions, guys? This one may be a fast one. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording, um, and let you guys talk a little bit more openly. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and this recording will go up onto the YouTube channel, and it should probably be there hopefully on Tuesday. Have a great night. See you next Saturday.